Okay, welcome back. We will be trying to create enemy abilities in this video. This is going to be probably the most complicated uh, thing that we are going to try and do because it is going to involve our first plugin. So, right here I have my tutorial, and I want to go to plugins right here. It's an empty folder. Well, in my other game, I'm going to do the same thing, except I got this right here, which I'm going to copy and paste in. I called this state unit ID. It is a text document, so Notepad or WordPad. I'm not sure which one. Let me open it up. So here we go. Oh, do I want to save changes to that? Don't save. I'm going to close out of that. All right, and now open this. Okay. So, looking right here, you would just need to type all this into a document like this and save it in this folder. I will try and copy and paste this maybe into the YouTube description, so you can copy and paste it, but otherwise you just look right here. Hopefully this is a high enough resolution that you can read all this. Let me see if I can zoom in. Hopefully that is helpful, and you can just pause the video here and copy this. I got this from the developer. Okay, so once you have this saved into your plugins folder, we're now going to go into the game, open map, and we're going to create a state. The state we're going to have is called Icicle, because we want the enemy to be able to cast Icicle. We'll give it a little blue symbol. Now for this item, now this is just a state. So we want this state to last, it doesn't really matter, I'm just going to say 2 turns. And I'm going to give it a -1 automatic recovery. So the enemy who is going to be inflicting this state is thinking they're going to be doing 1 damage for 2 turns when they cast it on me. Just to make them aggressive and want to cast this. Okay, now we are going to go to items. We're going to create an item. We're basically going to make it just the same thing. We'll have a blue icon here. I'm going to call it Icicle. I want to keep the uses as 0 so it has infinite. And I'm going to item type, I'm going to look for state, inflict state. Okay? The scope is what is the casting range. We're going to cast this on 2 spaces, just like we have for our mage's ability. Users, I'm going to leave that, I don't know if I want that as none. I'm just going to leave that as none. And we want to cast it on the player, I think. We'll see how this goes. But down here where it says poison 100%, we want to change that to icicle 100%. Okay? Let's go to our map over here. Now I'm going to just create one more unit. Reinforcement. We'll give it to our necromancer. We're going to get rid of this short sword and give this icicle. And we're going to make her magic 10. Okay, so now she has that and she wants to cast it. We are now going to go to an auto event. So we're going to create a new event called Icicle. New. It's going to be an auto event. And this is under map common events because we want this to work on all the maps, because we want Icicle on other maps. We want to rename it Icicle. Now the conditions. We want this to work on players who are alive and have the state Icicle. Simple enough. Now, this is a slightly more complicated part. We're going to go to New, and we're going to go to Execute Script. Visual bug. Come on. Let's try this again. New, Execute Script. There we go. And we want to execute code. Okay. Now I gotta see what we have to type in. Let me go back to. So we're gonna go back to this. We're gonna hit OK. And OK. I just need to find something from my other game. This one's Ice Burst. And we have state verifier dot get unit ID parentheses and semicolon. Let me copy that. Close out. We're going to go back to our auto events, Icicle, and execute script. We're going to copy and paste that in there, or type it out based on my video. Okay, so we want to save return value as a variable, and this is going to be a unit ID. And we're going to set this as unit ID 2 because this is the person we're casting it on. And now here in original data, the state that we want is going to be Icicle. Yep. Now in my other game, these other things aren't really here. I think they're just none or something like that. I think they're placeholders. I wouldn't worry about those. Hopefully we don't get bugs from those in the future. But now we have stored unit ID 2 as the unit that has that state. So that is going to cause this event to happen to anyone who has that state. So we just wanted this event to trigger, knowing that we have an enemy casting this on another unit. So now we want to store more variables. And this time we're going to use an active unit. So we want to store x1 as the unit, our active unit. So that would be the enemy. And we're going to store their x. And we're going to store their y as y1. And active unit means just whatever unit is acting at that time. And then we're going to do the same thing for unit ID. Unit ID 1 is stored as the active unit ID. And we're going to do the similar thing with x2 and y2. X2 is set to. Now in this case, we pulled unit ID 2 from that state. So the unit we want here, we don't want active. We want unit ID 2, the X of unit ID 2. We want the Y2 to be the Y of unit ID 2. Hopefully that's not too confusing. I will summarize at the end. And now the last thing we want to do, not last, but last for this intro part, is that we want to inflict state, but we're going to actually be removing this state, icicle. We're going to ignore the UI, and we're going to decrease this. So what are we actually trying to do here? We want to make it so the enemy can cast a spell, and we're going to do that through a map common event, auto event. How are we going to do that? Well, the enemy has an item and that they think is going to do damage to someone. So they're going to run over and use the item that's going to put this state on an enemy that they think is going to do damage. We are immediately going to store all the information of the person who uses that state, or who receives that state, using this execute script. So we know the unit ID of the person receiving the state. We're going to then store the information of the active unit, store the information of the receiving unit, and get rid of the state. All that tells us who's casting it, who's receiving the spell, where are they, and then we're triggering an event. That's all this did. Now we can do our icicle events. So no one's choosing anything. The enemy is automatically choosing this. So first thing I want to do is I want to create an animation. And in this case, I'm going to do it on unit ID 2 because it's a single target spell. And the animation is going to be icicle. Now I'm going to get the strength of the spell by finding and storing variables. So we want magic. Where's magic? There. And we're going to set that to unit ID 1's magic stat. We'll enable parameter bonus. We're going to do the same thing with resistance in the receiving enemy. Then we're going to subtract. Subtract resistance. Then we're going to multiply by a constant 175. We're going to divide by 100, so we just added an extra 75 damage. We're then going to extensive command. This is going to affect the player or an ally. We can do an ally as well. And we are going to reduce hit points. It's going to start at unit ID 2. And we're going to specify 0 range because we only want it hitting this unit. I'm going to set this to free so they can use it more than once. And where we have the animation, I'm also going to set it as enemy target 1. So we see the box and then it's only one single spot. Now I believe this should work. Now where's our necromancer? There's our necromancer. She has icicle. She has 10 magic. Let's see how this goes. Well, let's first make sure she's aggressive as well. So if she's on approach, she has 10 magic. Let's see how this works. Oh, well, she used it on one of her allies. So let's see what's wrong. Icicle. So I think by player, that assumes that it's the same person on their own army. So we're going to switch it to enemy. Let's see if this works now. Okay, she now targeted our unit. Cast Icicle, played the animations, and did 0 damage. So what happened there? The only thing that didn't work was that it did 0 damage. What is the resistance of our character? He should have a resistance of 4. Let's just double check that. The game's lagging a little bit. Hopefully I can get this video done. His resistance is 4, she has 10, so she should have done like 9 damage. Instead we did 0. What went wrong? So all this seemed to work. This worked. This worked. We got the magic of unit ID 1, the resistance of unit ID 2. Then we subtracted resistance from magic, which should have been like 6. Multiplied. Oh, I did. I never set this part. So we're going to get rid of that part. We want. Where's none? I don't see none anywhere. Okay, well, we'll ignore that part. I don't know why it's not letting me get rid of this animation. But we're going to do fixed damage, and the variable is going to be magic. Also, I want to show that she can cast it from range, so she can do, what's her movement? 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I want to put him right here, right above this mountain. She should still be able to use it. See, she can cast it from range. I'll cast the spell. It did 10 damage. And there you have it. Enemies can cast spells. Oh, I hope I had my air conditioning on, sorry. Hopefully that didn't drown out the sound too badly. Now, you can do the same thing for AoE spells, but the way this works is it will always target a unit. So it's not like the enemy is going to target the ground and know to do anything special. It won't prioritize hitting multiple enemies at once. It's just going to pick whatever unit that it thinks is best based on the game's default AI. Now there's a couple of special things you can do with this. This doesn't work for healing. Specifically, I have another way of doing that with a script the developer wrote. Now, what if you give her 2 abilities? Let's say she has Icicle and Ice Burst, and you want her to prioritize one over the other. Well, the way you would do that is just by having another state for Ice Burst and doing the exact same thing. And whichever one you want to have the enemy prioritize, you just make the automatic recovery a more damaging recovery. So it'll think that one is better. Like, for example, on one boss, I want them to use their melee ability as opposed to their ranged ability when they can. So I made their automatic recovery -10 instead of -1 for their melee ability. And then how do enemies prioritize using these? I can't really change this as far as I know, but the game seems to default this method as going for the person who has the least defense, which quite often ends up being enemies, in my game at least, who have the highest resistance. So a lot of the abilities enemies use are magic abilities, and they end up going for the person who they do the least amount of damage to. As I said, not much I can do about that, but there is a lot more you can do with targeting with this. For example, I have one boss where I inflict a state on someone with this method, and then I also have the boss set to not aim for that state. So let's say you activate cold when you cast the icicle ability, and then the boss gets another. Then you have another necromancer wanting to cast a spell, but they won't go for people who already have cold on them. So then they'll go for someone else instead of that. That's one thing you can do. But hopefully this shows you how to get it to work. You can always pause on where we have those scripts and type them in. And I will see if I can put the scripts into maybe the description of this video. That's it for this one. Maybe I'll be back with one to get healing to work. Thank you.